Okay, so I'm just gonna start in this room. In this room, we'll be explaining. Sorry, let me just adjust the mic. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll be explaining the ingredients that make up Heineken beer. Does anybody know how much water is in a Heineken beer? Does anybody want to guess a percentage?
90%.
90%? That's very close actually. It's 95%. So yeah, water makes up a lot of the Heineken beer, which is why it's very important that no matter where the Heineken is brewed, it's always the same quality. Which is why we have a purification process in the Heineken breweries known as reverse osmosis, which takes out the larger molecules of the water and just makes sure that the quality of the water is consistent no matter where the Heineken is. Yeah, and then the next ingredient we use is barley. And barley comes from, at least the barley that Heineken uses comes from the south of France. I actually have some here, so I can show you guys. Most of you probably know what barley is. It's just a cereal grain, and the way it's used in making beer is that it first has to be malted, which means the barley is soaked in water until it begins to sprout, and after that, the barley begins to sprout, and it's then roasted slightly, just a little bit, because the level that the barley is roasted actually determines the color of the beer. So for Heineken, we want to lightly roast it to get that golden color. If you roast it anymore, you get a much darker beer. Yeah. And the second thing we do with the barley is that it's mixed with water again at a higher temperature, and that brings out sugar from the starch in the barley, which is very important later on, because that will then be turned into alcohol. Then the third ingredient we have is hops, and I have some here for you guys to see. Hops is a plant that it grows very quickly. It actually grows up to 30 centimeters a day. If you look at the picture over there, that's a hops plants. They grow up to 8 meters tall. Yeah, we get our hops from Germany, from Czech Republic, and the United States. So the hops is also very important because it does three things for Heineken beer. It gives it the foam layer on top of the beer. It also gives it its slightly bitter flavor. And finally, it contains a very important component which is called lupulin, which is from the female flower of the hops plant. And that helps to preserve the beer, meaning that we don't need to add any artificial additives, artificial preservatives to Heineken beer. So then, the hops is added, and finally we have the Heineken's secret ingredient, which is the A yeast. And the A yeast was developed actually in the 1800s. We've been using the same yeast strain since then, and it's currently kept in a secret location in Zoeterwoude, but it's kept under lock and key, so no one here knows exactly what the yeast is, but I can tell you what it does. It's basically is a unicellular organism which eats the sugar from previous processes and turns it into carbon dioxide and alcohol. So it's very important. It gives the beer its bubbles, and yeah, obviously the alcohol, and finally the yeast is also what gives our beer its kind of fruity flavor. Later you'll go to have a little taste of Heineken, and you might notice when you smell the beer that it has a slight banana smell, and that is also from the yeast. Yeah, and then so just to explain a little more, the yeast is added and the beer is fermented for 7 days, and after that it's stored for another 21 days after the yeast has been removed, and then it's ready to be shipped out and bottled. Yeah, so in the next room, my colleague will be explaining a little more about the brewing process. Yeah, enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.